It was a hard journey because you don't know what you don't know. I still exactly remember this. So I joined the company in January 2013, I think. And we were having a meeting doing some planning for the year, and it was around comp plans. And the CEO looked at me and said, Melinda, what do you think? And in my head, I'm like, I don't know, because I'd never designed a comp plan.
Yeah.
It's one of those lessons to always say, I don't know. That was always advice given. It's better to say, I don't know, than to just make something up.
Welcome to Beyond the Ledger, real conversations with people driving business forward. I'm Troy Ashby, CPA and host. Each episode, we unpack stories, challenges, and insights from today's top accounting and finance leaders. This podcast is brought to you by my friends over at MarketScale. Welcome back to Beyond the Ledger. Today's guest is Melinda Lawrence. She's a former EY audit partner turned growth-focused CFO. Melinda's career has spanned continents, capital raises, and corporate transformations, all grounded in her belief that great leadership blends financial discipline with a people-centered approach. Melinda, good to see you.
Hi, great to be here.
Absolutely.
Great to be here. It's exciting coming to this space. I think as I first walked in and I shared, this is where I started my whole career journey. We're in I guess it's now the Bank of America Plaza building downtown. And I started my career here with Arthur Andersen in 1992. That's a really long time ago. And actually, it started earlier than that. One piece I didn't share was when I was a senior in high school, I worked in this building for Arthur Andersen. So
No kidding.
For 87 to 88, our school district had a fabulous internship program for seniors. You didn't get paid. It was a management training program. So they taught us about leadership. We learned about different career fields. So I came down and worked for Arthur Andersen as a senior in high school.
That's
working
cool.
in their AP department. So I was learning how to, all the different things that companies had to pay, and then started my journey here in 92 with Arthur Andersen.
Welcome back to the building.
Yeah. And as I said, some of the things haven't changed. The view has changed dramatically, but there's the downstairs is, brought back a flood of memories.
I bet it did. It's funny. We've known each other for probably a couple of decades, and I either forgot or didn't know that you also started at Andersen.
Yeah, there's a lot of us.
Yeah, there is. Because I always think of you as the EY partner, because you and I both obviously went from Andersen to EY, but I didn't know that. And I also didn't know they were in this building. Because I definitely, when I moved from Oklahoma City here, we were in the building up there on Ross.
Yeah. So big change. So it's fun to reminisce and think about, as we talk about our journey and our careers, spanning now 3 decades, that it all started in kind of this one place that's actually still here. There's a lot of places that aren't around anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's great.
Memory lane.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I think you've had a tremendous career and, over a decade now as in the CFO suite. And I'm looking forward to kind of hearing all about that. And I know there's a lot for people to learn, but before we do that, I would love just people to get to know you a little bit, something that isn't on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So I'm a mom, a wife, a daughter, a sister. My faith and my family are incredibly important to me. They don't see all the things that I do in my personal life, supporting my kids. We like to go to the lake. I like to wake surf. My first job was a water ski instructor.
Okay.
So I've done a lot of fun things back in the day. It doesn't say on there that I wanted to be an accountant starting from 6th grade.
And that's true?
That is true. I'm a little, I won't say embarrassed because I'm very proud of what I've done, but I knew early on when I was in 6th grade, I put that I was going to be an accountant. And what's even funnier is that I said I was going to marry an accountant. So lo and behold, I did.
Unreal. Now, is this you're playing the MASH game?
Yeah. So it's, there's not a lot of people who know at a young age what they want to do. And now we're pushing kids to do it, which I think is unfortunate. But that's neither here nor there. I just knew early my dad was a tax guy. And so I grew up listening to what he did. Knew I didn't want to go into tax, but just fell in love with problem solving. And that's what.
Was he in public as well?
He started his career in public accounting and then quickly moved into industry. And actually, my parents moved to Dallas in 1968, and he started the tax department at Syntex.
Okay.
The home builder.
Unreal. All right.
So that's a little bit, about me that you don't see, except I did just share about my daughter. She got a really great opportunity. She's at TCU. So I reshared a post where she was talking about something she was really proud of. And so I shared it as the proud mom and proud TCU alum.
I just saw that. Was that yesterday, I think?
Yeah, something like that. So that's someone would probably then figure out that I had, I was a mom from
Right.
LinkedIn.
Well, let's dive in. And there's a lot of different places we can go, but the place I wanted to start is you had a successful career in public. You just said it. You went to Anderson, then Ernst & Young. I think you had an international trip that we can talk about, or a stint that we can talk about there. But after making partner, you left and started your industry career and jumped headfirst into a CFO suite. So let's kind of start there. You can pick it up wherever you want, but I think there's some pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah, I think there's the common theme of people and being surrounded by wonderful people in my career journey and getting a lot of great advice. And I'll just start, why did I make the jump from public to industry? And I was serving on a board at my church. We were doing a lot of strategy work. And I realized how much fun it was to look forward and plan. I was early 2010s timing, so the early, a decade ago. We were planning for 2020 because that's what everybody was doing. They were planning for 2020 because that sounded really cool. And I said, wow, this is somewhere where you're leaving impact. I'd been a partner for about 7 years. So I started looking at some different options, and a partner that I had known and trusted introduced me to the company where I went for my first CFO opportunity, OneSource Virtual. They're doing great. They're a fantastic company in the Workday environment. They're a Workday partner, and it sounded like a great opportunity to jump in. Really, really, really hard.
Okay.
I don't recommend jumping from partner to CFO. I've known some people who've done it.
Right.
You've got to, again, surround yourself with really great people. So when I did that, I had some EY folks connect me to some other CFOs. So at that point, I joined a cohort of CFOs. And some of them I still meet with regularly now, where we just get together and solve problems and talk through issues and give everybody feedback and support. It's really, really helpful. But again, it was a hard journey because you don't know what you don't know.
Right. So talk about that. What were some of the items that you had to struggle through? Great that you could have a community, but talk about what that looked like coming from a partnership and then going to there.
I still exactly remember this. So I joined the company in January of 2013, I think. And we're having a meeting doing some planning for the year, and it was about comp plans. And the CEO looked at me and said, Melinda, what do you think? And in my head, I'm like, I don't know, because I'd never designed a comp plan.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember how I replied. I just remember what was in my head of, oh my God, I have no idea. And, we figured it out, and it's okay. It's one of those lessons to always say, I don't know. That was always advice given. It's better to say, I don't know, than to just make something up. And that was something I learned back when I was in the boardroom at EY presenting to board members. It's always better to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you.
Sure.
Yeah.
It is funny because you said it, right out of the gate is you didn't know what you didn't know. You knew you'd had a successful career. Everybody knew you'd had a successful career. But now you had to figure it out.
Yeah. And the hard part was changing from managing audit teams, which are very project-based, to managing a department. And so I can remember this was before podcasts came out. I was like, what am I doing? I don't know how to run a department. What should I be doing? I don't know how to have one-on-ones and just how should I do this? So I listened to, it was founded on the web. It was something called Manager Tools. It still exists. I still tell people to go use it. But it talked about what's the importance of one-on-ones. What are they about? And then department meetings, and just really helped me think through that switch from running an audit project and communicating with the audit team and communicating with leadership and communicating with your client's leadership. And how do I shift all of that and lead a department and lead with executive team members? And, I was at my first one, I came into a group of people who'd worked together for years. They were incredible at welcoming me. I felt like I was one of their sisters. and really helping teach me the business, which was really fun.
Because you said at the project base, but so those that didn't come through audit or tax or through public accounting, it's like a sprint, right?
Right.
You're literally just managing them through that sprint where now you've got a team that is a marathon.
Right. Right.
And then all the little things that come along with it.
Yeah. And managing people of different talents and different skills. So if you think about public accounting, you're hiring the best of the best. And they're all, generally speaking, all hungry. They want to come in. Not everybody wants to come in and make partner.
Sure.
Which is great. But they're all generally hard workers. They did well in school, so they're smart. Yes, on occasion, you get the person who isn't that hard of a worker. And you understand the goal and objective. In a department, you've got to manage that, and you've got to do a lot of cascading of how do we fit into the bigger picture? What are we being measured against? And then really making those people feel valued.
Sure.
At an audit firm, oftentimes people work on more than one account. You've got a buddy, you've got a mentor, you've got all these people assigned to you to help take care of you and grow your career. In the companies I've joined, we've been smaller. We haven't had those types of formal programs. And so it's really, how do I connect with everyone, even if I haven't ever done their job? Because I was walking in and I'd never done those jobs.
Right.
And so I had to quickly figure out, how do we connect and how do I help them motivate? And I actually read something really that I really, really liked, that my job is to motivate, educate, and celebrate. I thought that was a really good, concise way to talk about leadership,
succinct, yeah.
right? And a lot of times leaders forget that celebrate. I think in the audit world, I learned how to do that because you'd have a lunch or you'd have an audit closing dinner or party. Man, Anderson was really good about the audit closing. And so I had to learn how to translate that into wins and celebrate everyone. And, a lot of times it's, well, they're just doing their job, but people want to feel valued and recognized.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've always heard about you've been at several different companies in the C-suite role, was really your ability to, whether it's to pull out the best of them or develop them. Is that something that you learned in public? Have you been doing that on your own? Talk about your style and kind of developing those folks.
Well, this was really fun. Now that I'm at the age where my friends' kids are working, I went and had breakfast with one of my really good friends' kids. And he told his mom after was, hey, Mom, you were right. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I wanted to get the best out of everybody because I like to have fun at work. I want to make sure people feel valued and supported.
You have all these new people. Is the systems on the horizon, or is that going to be?
Yes,
it's got to be soon, right?
Yes, we've been doing a lot of work around what does the business need across the entire landscape. So from sales to operations to our warehouse to inventory to accounting to our service teams to our construction management groups. What do we need to run the business, and will they all talk together? So now we've got that all chosen. Now it's just go execute and not mess up in the process, because systems transformations are really, really hard.
Yeah, I'm sure you've been through a few.
Yes. In fact, I was telling somebody yesterday I have a lot of scars from them. So that is part of, I go back to starting my journey is don't ever be afraid to ask for help and, tell me what you know, what things should I not step in that you stepped in.
Right.
So I have those conversations a lot.
Well, so you mentioned something, I want to go back to it because I think some people could make this mistake, and I think you could elaborate a little bit more on. You looked for a while, right? It took you. You want to make sure you made the right hire. What are some key things that you look for to make sure that they're going to work with you? I know each company is going to require different things that you have to adapt to, but I'm just curious what you've seen work.
Yeah. So for me, it's interesting. So I hired a director of FP&A and controller. So 2 reports directly to me. I have somebody else that reports to me, but they were in place before I got there. And it's interesting is reference checks are really, really important to me because I can meet someone and, ask questions and understand they understand the skills, but how do they really work?
Yeah.
And, a lot of people will say, reference checks are only going to say good things. Right, of course. But I've learned what questions are really important to me. And the best part, director of FP&A, his former CFO, they were both going through a transition. So it was okay for me to talk to his current boss.
Oh, that's nice.
Was somebody I worked with at Anderson.
Okay.
And so I trusted her, and she told me what he was really good at. And I was like, wow, that's exactly what I need. And then on my controller, I was able to ask, how does she works in a high stake environment where things are changing and we're growing and, it can be intense. And then just, did you have confidence in her work? But that was really important. And I think it is never feeling the pressure to hire fast.
Yeah.
Especially for those high stakes roles.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny that you mentioned references. I do find that fewer and fewer check them. And maybe it's because of what you just said. Oh, they're never going to give you somebody that's bad. And
Right.
that's true.
Right.
But even the good litmus test is even just getting the list.
Right.
Like,
Right.
if you don't, and just for anybody that's coming up, you can't keep burning bridges, or you're not going to have anybody that can talk about you.
Right.
And I think that is something that has bitten a few people that I've known in my career is, well, the last 3 jobs, I don't have somebody that could be a good vouch for me.
Right.
But I like what you said about the references because it almost confirms what you already knew.
Right.
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 You're not trying to change your mind. It's good to hear how you might work with them.
Yeah. And also hearing for yourself, would you hire them again? And that person
Yeah.
saying yes, kind of going back to they wouldn't have given you the name. Right. But I know if there's somebody I'm not going to give a reference for, I will say no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I haven't had that happen. But if I give a reference, I'll be honest, what were you coaching them on? That's always a great question.
I agree.
And usually people, especially at this level, will be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take away and say, okay, is that something that I can live with?
Right. And we all should be working on something, right?
Yeah,
If there's nothing that we're working on, then are we growing?
Right. Right. And, the other thing I'd say that is really important is getting them off to the right foot and having a really good onboarding plan. So when they come in, what do you expect from them in the first 30 days? The first 60 days, first 90 days. What am I doing today that I would like for you to take over? Or what is somebody else doing that really should be on your plate? And just, I have an open door, right? I know that's an old saying, but I really want to make sure they're set up for success.
Is your onboarding more formal? Is there certain stepping stones that are there and expectations, or is it one-on-ones? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for me, I make my own. I think every manager should own his or her direct reports onboarding. And it is starting with the job description. Why did I hire them? What am I expecting them to really do? What are anything issues that I know that are open that we need to look out for? My controller started and we are immediately closing the books. And I was really lucky to have my interim controller stay and help her hands-on. So
nice.
that was huge
Yeah.
for onboarding, that I had this interim controller be able to sit side by side with her and get her up to speed so she could ask questions, because there's probably some things that I couldn't answer because that wasn't part of my daily routines. But I think giving someone the room to ask questions, having a plan, that's one thing I talk about a lot is I don't care what the plan is, just have a plan.
Yeah.
So we can always go back to it because, I want to make sure that, they know what success looks like, and making sure they're meeting all the people in the company that they may interact with. That might be that they don't go to them that much, but I want them to start building that relationship and no, just don't sit in your office.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. We could keep talking about that and several other topics, but I wanted to, something I had noticed about you, having known you for a while, and you can take this however you want or wherever you want it to go. Most successful leaders that I surround myself with seem to be giving back a lot in the community, sitting on boards, and you've done that a lot, and you're often promoting them. I see you posting it on LinkedIn, but you're not just a committee member; you're getting really involved. So, talk to me about kind of one, why you're doing it, and then two, the benefits that you've had by being so involved.
Yeah, so it's varied over my career. There were certain things where I'd get involved that were more related to my kids. in their schools and helping build up a great school in our community. Or it may have been at my church, or it may have been something EY related. And now I've been focused on the CFO Leadership Council because that was a group that I joined, I think, in 2019 before COVID hit. And I walked in and knew some people and I said, oh, wow. In fact, it was an old EY client of mine who invited me, who had left where we worked together and was a CFO. And I just said, wow, this is a great community of people. And I remember how welcoming everybody was and just what a great group of thinkers in there, always thinking ahead. And what skills as CFOs should we have? Because it's ever changing. I mean, right? It's changed a lot since I've become a CFO.
Sure.
And so then I got involved. They asked me to be on the advisory board. I have a really hard time saying no. And I said, wow, this will get me connected to our sponsors. So we have sponsors that we work with. I'll get to know them better. And some of the other CFOs I'll get to just know more personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was asked to be a co-chair this year. So I'm a co-chair for the Dallas chapter. And I mean, honestly, it's not that much more time.
Yeah.
But the giving back is that I remember what it was like to walk in somewhere and not know somebody and just know I needed a community. A lot of the C-suite positions, you can feel very alone. And that is one thing that's so important to me, is for people to know they're never alone. And I think that's really what this community brings, is you're never alone. There is always someone who has walked through that journey with you and said, hey, I've been there. I'm happy to help. We've got some great tools and resources. You can ask things confidentially and get some resources. And it was great to hear about them as an investor.
Right. Yeah. So they were able to give you like the inside scoop.
The inside scoop.
Yeah.
Kind of, again, going back to the reference, I love backdoor references. And because I've been in Dallas so long, I feel like I can always find that touch point. But again, going back to the CFO Leadership Council, it's just, you learn so much. And it goes back to you don't know what you don't know. And then you can go to some of our events. You can read some of the thought leadership. We have a fabulous annual conference. Well, we have 2 of them now. And you can learn things. And I think that is important as leaders or anybody to just keep learning.
Yeah. Are these small cohorts? Is it conference style? What does this look like?
Yeah. So it's a year-round group, but in the summer we don't meet in person, but we'll have different people come in and talk to us about various topics. So we just had some discussions about M&A after the dust settles was our last one. So, okay, you've done the deal, and we've had panels about that. Like, okay, think about leading up to the deal. Okay, but once you close it, what really happens? And we had, actually, I got one of my HR folks that I used to work with. She was on the panel. We had a CFO and we had an IT leader. So those are the 3 key leadership positions, trying to put it all together and figure it out. And then a little side note. So I'm a podcast junkie, and one of my favorite podcasts is Business Wars.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of that one.
Not, but I'll check it out because I'm also a podcast junkie.
It's really good. And I think I'm on season 112 or 13 right now.
Oh, wow.
And this one is what happened to AOL Time Warner after they closed the deal. And there's just so much truth behind this, of cultures clashing and all of this. So like, I loved listening to that, but it's better to even hear it from people that who've gone through this, and what do they really recommend.
Yeah.
And you can walk away. We always want to make sure you walk away with one thing. And so I think we've been able to do that. So we'll have different sessions throughout the year. There's always thought leadership being developed. Our president does podcasts, so you can listen to those. And then we have 2 conferences a year. Actually, right now in New York is a finance and technology expo that's free for members to go, and you can look at all of the latest technology that is supporting finance and accounting.
Yeah.
I'm sad I couldn't go this year. I'm looking ready for updates. And I think the biggest thing that we've gotten is lots of real-time feedback on AI. That is the biggest thing that is transforming the office of the CFO.
Yeah.
And being able to get to some of the best leaders in the globe who have given real world examples of how we can use it.
Well, so let's, over the course of your career, growth through adversity or challenge, has there been something that stood out to you that has been maybe something that felt like a challenge at the time that made you a better leader today?
Well, yeah, it's interesting is I always knew I was an extrovert and that I thrive being around people. I think it's going back to just who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And then I always say growing up in my career in an audit environment where you were always surrounded by people and that you had to get your job done to help other people. And you were up late, working together, working weekends together. And during COVID, when we all started working from home and I was working in the corner of my bedroom, it took me a long time to figure out what was wrong with me. And not wrong, but different.
Sure.
And I hated every minute of it.
I did too.
I was like, this is not how I like to work. I was able to onboard some people, but onboarding somebody in finance where we were really working on our strategic plan and our growth model, that was really hard when you're wanting to point to a screen and you're like, look at my clicker and cell A32.
Yeah.
And so that was a struggle just by nature. And also, in fact, it just happened the other day. I like to listen what's going on and go react and see how I can help. So going back to your question, I don't think I realized what an extrovert I was and how much I got energy from being around people.
Right.
And so I needed to make sure that my next opportunity was always going to be around that. And also that I really enjoy helping run a business and that being focused on just reporting numbers isn't what I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
I enjoy thinking about where are we heading, where are we going, what are we doing to take care of our people. Yes, I like to tell the story through the numbers, but it's also to remember there are humans behind the numbers. What are we doing? And it's been really interesting. So I have a new CEO, and one thing, going back to talking about the transition to being a CFO from being an audit, and thinking about how important it is for managers to set expectations. And that we were just talking about a certain individual, and he said, I bet his manager wasn't telling him what he needs to be doing.
Yeah.
As opposed to, not everyone's a go-getter. Not everyone was taught, like we were in public accounting. Right. If you need something to do, you ask. Not everyone was taught that. And so that was a really good reminder for me of the importance of having a manager set expectations and give feedback a lot.
Yes, feedback. I think that is one, expectations, because otherwise you're just doing what's given to you, and sometimes you're unutilized, right?
Right.
And then you don't know it if you don't get feedback. And if you're not asking for feedback, if you've got an introverted accountant,
right?
Now what?
Yeah. So it's so funny you talk about the feedback. So going back to when I first became a CFO, and again, we did performance reviews all the time in public accounting, that it talked about just making feedback part of what you do, not in a meeting, not, hey, in your annual review or whatever, but it was, let's say we're in a meeting, you did a great job. You presenting something. Come out of the meeting, Troy, you did a great job. I really liked how you did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Or, hey, Troy, you kind of missed the boat on this. Think about this next time. And giving that feedback. And then it doesn't become a big deal. You don't go, oh my God, Melinda's calling me to her office. What is she going to tell me?
Real-time feedback. Which really is just meant to help them grow.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right. Sometimes those one-on-ones is like a laundry list of, you need to do this better.
Right. And we even
you don't want it to be that way.
Right. And it's funny. Someone was talking about, they frame it as the feedback sandwich. So something good that we need to work on and something good again. I'm like, no, just give them feedback all the time.
Yeah. If you've got to organize it in that way, it is more robotic.
Yeah. And then things get lost. And so if you just focus on, hey, here's one thing I noticed. Hey, next time, let's think about this.
And it helps them grow.
Right? And then it just becomes not a big deal.
Right.
right? And that's what, I appreciate. I'm a feedback. I like it myself. So we had our first board meeting with my new CEO. I was like, how'd I do? And I'm sure he's like, just relax. It's okay.
Right. You're good.
Yeah.
Well, so, in the seat, I've seen a lot, and COVID brought this out in a lot of people, but one, it's lonely at the C-suite, but burnout happens a lot. So what have you kind of done, if anything, to kind of manage the burnout factor?
Yeah. That's something I still need to work on. I think the first part is recognition that you're struggling.
Yeah.
And it's really hard as leaders to say, hey, I'm having a hard time right now. I'm a very I won't say closed off person because I share a lot at work. Everybody knows about my kids. They know what I'm doing for the weekend, but they don't know if, struggling, right?
Yeah,
You're just not going to share that. And so I actually had my last CEO said, hey, Melinda, you always come across like everything is fine and it's great. It's okay to be human and let me know when you're having challenges. And that was a good reminder for me. Now, you don't want to overshare, right? But that's okay. And it was helpful to see, like I have aging parents. So I'm in the sandwich. Like I live it daily.
Yeah.
And, being able to talk openly about that and share. So I have a wonderful set of my college girlfriends that, before I came, I was like, hey, I'm going to do this podcast. Wish me luck. And, I know they'll be my biggest cheerleaders, and all of them are executives and they all get it. I have a Bible study group who will help me. So my faith is really important to me. And that's probably the group I'm the most honest when I'm getting tired. I work out a lot. So I'm in a fitness gym that I really like. So that has really helped. I've not been there quite 2 years. And then, it's all the same things. It's healthy eating. It's, getting outside, getting enough sleep. That's probably where I'm the worst at.
Yeah.
And not beating myself up if I don't get anything accomplished on the weekend, because sometimes that's exactly what I need to do.
Right. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. Awareness first. Because all the other things that you've just described are managing it.
Right.
But if you aren't aware of it, you aren't managing it, and it catches up to you.
Right. Yeah. Like there's some things that I'm just personally trying to figure out right now that I'm really struggling with how to manage it. And I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, Melinda, just the fact that you're struggling with this specific thing I've got going on in my life. It was like, wow, that's really good that you know.
Right.
And so now it's just figuring out, a lot of times people say you just have to figure it out. You just have to get over it. You just have to manage it. So a lot of times this just takes time. Right. And it's okay to take a day off if you need something, make sure everyone knows. But I really enjoy working, and I have fun with it. Like I said, I really like the people I work with. I'm proud of what we do. I'm proud of what I do. So going like tonight to the high school football game, that brings me so much energy that if it's been a hard week, doing something like that is really fun for me.
Not all accountants are extroverts, but every time I see you at a conference, first of all, you are always happy and you are always talking to other people. So it's not surprised that maybe a lot of us have a mask on at work and hide it, whether we know it or not.
For sure.
And I think sometimes that's just self-preservation, especially when you're the CFO.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah. The last thing, what I always have in my mind, the last thing anybody at a company wants to see is a stressed out CFO.
Right.
Right. That's just a really bad look.
Yep.
And so I've learned how to manage through that because I recognize that that's not helpful. On the flip side, the other thing is that I want anybody that I work with to bring their full authentic self to work. I think that was probably something that we talked about at EY. And I loved that phrase.
Yeah.
And I want to understand if there's something, is someone having a performance issue? Is there something else going on that we need to know about so we can help support them rather than just saying, Troy, you're underperforming. I am so sorry. We're going to put you on a PIP, which those don't work, by the way. But yeah.
And you're like, oh, well, let me tell you why.
Yes. Yeah. It's always good to know. People want to feel valued and people want to know that you care. And I think that's what people will tell you about me is I really, really care about the people I work with.
I think it's also because you're a really good listener, which I think is a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about over the course of your career. What's like something that stands out as a milestone or success or like the biggest high, something that you've had in your career?
Yeah. So you alluded to it before. So moving overseas, I joke. So my first CEO, he was like, "You're not a risk taker." And I was like, "Dude, I moved overseas."
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting move. It was August of 2000. My husband had just finished his MBA that we uprooted to go to Chicago for him to get his MBA from Kellogg. And I worked for Anderson's national office, and I was not super jazzed about the opportunities that we had in front of us. And I found about an opportunity to go to Paris, France with EY. They needed somebody there. That's another, we talked about small world stories. There was somebody from the Dallas office working over in Paris, and I just randomly stumbled across it and say, "Hey, what's going on over there?
No way.
Why are you there?" And so that was a really, really big move, especially for someone who grew up in Dallas. And, when we moved to Chicago, that was a really big deal.
Right.
Because I was thinking we had bought a house when we got married. I was going to be living in that house until we needed a bigger one. And I was set. And did plans change? I mean, I don't know how many people I've shared this with, but so my husband was going to get his MBA. I figured at some point I'd go part-time and, stay home with the kids and, work part-time. And well, that's not what happened, So it was a big thing, it was a big thing for my husband to say, "Hey, I'm good with going over there." He had a role he went over with a company where he'd done an internship. He was going to help them expand into Europe. We all know the .com bust happened. So then he didn't have a job and we're in Paris.
Wow.
And then Arthur Andersen fell apart. And I had a baby while we were over there, and he tried out some other opportunities while we're there. But I'd say that is probably one of the biggest things I'm proud of is going and navigating that for this girl from Texas who, strangely enough, I took French. I took several years of French, even in college, so I could understand everything. But I do not have an ear for language, so it didn't sound very good. But my husband learned it, and he was the one that sounded good. And so we were a pretty good team over there. But
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So it was really, really fun.
And now you have a kid with dual citizenship?
No, they don't grant citizenship.
They don't?
But she took French.
Okay.
She got a 5 on her AP exam, so we're pretty proud of her. She loved it. But I think it really taught me, again, growing up in Texas, I went to TCU. There's a lot of international students. I didn't ever have any appreciation for how hard that was.
Yeah.
And now I get it. Like, I get it when you're in a room and everyone is speaking French. I still vividly remember my very first meeting. So I worked in the capital markets group. We worked with French companies who were listed in the U.S. One of our clients had done an IPO, and back then you could do confidential filings with the SEC. And we were going through their very first comment letter. I could follow along what number we were on. I knew that. And I can remember stock options doesn't translate. So I could remember talking about stock options and just sitting there. I was exhausted for days trying, your brain is working so hard.
Yeah.
And so I now understand when people, English isn't their first language, or Texas is like a whole other country for people coming from other parts of the U.S. And so understanding that not everyone, has the same background and interests. And so, yeah. And it showed me that I could do hard things. When we first moved to Chicago, I probably moped for weeks because I was really not happy.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I didn't want to move. I had my life planned out. I didn't want to move. And I learned I could do hard things. And then I learned, I think more about myself and who I was. And I got really involved with a lot of different things there. And yeah, it was really fun. So I'd say whenever you get an opportunity to go overseas, one, it's wonderful personally and professionally. And you learn how to do hard things.
A whole new perspective.
Yeah.
And I love you learn how to do hard things because it helps you grow.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Even though I'm probably closer to retirement than I was starting my career, that if I'm not learning, then I'm not having fun.
Yeah. You said retirement. I can see you be the one that says, I'm going to part-time retire, just like when you were thought you were going to go part-time way back when. I see how that ends for you. I know one of our mutual friends and he's going to come on the show, Felix.
Oh, yeah.
His retirement still looks extremely busy.
Yeah. So I'll give a good shout out to Deborah Von Stork. She's a retired EY partner, and she says you're not retired, you're just rewired. And so she serves on board. So I think I'll probably do something like that. Not quite ready. I want my youngest to graduate college before I even really kind of think about it. But I don't know. I just think there's still a lot that we can do. And especially, I look at my parents, they're 85 and 89. I joke with our kids.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law is in her 80s. My father-in-law lived until his 80s. So I joke with my kids. I'm like, we're going to be around a while.
You're stuck with me.
You're stuck with me. And so, I don't want to, just hang out. But I do look at one of my really good friends. She retired. Her husband's retired. They're close to my age. I see some of the fun things she's doing. And I'm like, she's on a board. So,
yeah. Before I let you go, first of all, is there anything we haven't covered that would be good for us to cover?
I think one of the things that I've learned and I get questions about is, interviewing and, preparing for that or whatever. And my biggest piece of advice is be yourself.
Be authentic.
Yeah, be authentic.
Back to the Anderson days.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just be your authentic self. Be vulnerable. Let people know when you've made a mistake, own it. Don't ever try and cover it up, and learn to communicate. Yeah, that's really, really important.
That's perfect.
So, yeah.
Well, good. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing
This was
so
a lot
much.
of fun.
I've enjoyed it too.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
All right. I'm Troy Ashby. And remember, people are more than their titles, and companies are more than their balance sheets. Follow Beyond the Ledger so you never miss an episode.